Well, hello, everybody. I've been able to say that since I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma. And mom
Well,
and dad wouldn't let me stay up too late because the sports reporter, a guy by the name of Ross Porter on WKY TV, it was too late for me to stay up and go to school. And so I very seldom got to see him, but he was still the idol of every Oklahoma sports person. And then all of a sudden, out in LA, how in the hell could they possibly pick a guy from Oklahoma from a local sports station to be the broadcaster on the Los Angeles Dodgers? I have holy cow, this Porter guy must really be good. He get out there,
well,
big
as a tribute to you today, John, I'm wearing my 1938 University of Oklahoma baseball jersey. I was born in 1938, and our son a few years ago presented me with this on my birthday.
Oh,
So,
that is special. Now, I didn't go to college, so here's my philosophy: whichever team, Oklahoma State, or even Tulsa, has the best ranking, I want them to win because I want them to be and have the better rating and have a chance to play in the bowl games
yeah,
or in the College World Series of baseball, whatever it is. So I don't have an allegiance, but I will support both teams.
well, good for you. Johnny and I didn't meet in Oklahoma. He started watching me when he was 12 years old, and that went on for about 6 years until I came to Channel 4 in Los Angeles. But anytime we see each other, anytime, Johnny does an impersonation of me when we were in Oklahoma. Would you repeat that for us today?
Hello, everybody. This is Ross Porter, WKY Sports, and we're bringing you the latest in. And Mantle just hit his 54th home run. Is that going to be enough for Roger Maris? I think Mickey just said, "Roger, you take Babe. I'll take care of Luke." That's kind of the way it went.
Oh, wow. Terrific. Johnny, folks, just celebrated his 75th birthday. And I called him at his home in Florida to congratulate him. He was not home, but he has the G period, O period, A period, T period voicemail of all time. And Johnny, I want you to share that with the folks right now. What's on that voicemail when you call your house?
Oh, they may want to steal it. A lot of people have listened to it and said, "Can I use that?" It says, "Well, the phone rings, the machine picks up, and I say, 'Hi, it's Johnny. I'm not here right now, and I'm making some changes in my life. Leave your number. If I don't call you back, you're one of the changes.'"
I love it. That's terrific. Well, we're going to review Johnny's Hall of Fame baseball career very shortly, but I want to start this conversation by talking about his life off the field and some things you probably don't know. When you were 6 years old, you picked cotton for 2 cents a pound, even with cut hands. You could pick, you said, 300 pounds a day, and that allowed you to go out and buy a new pair of blue jeans.
Well, they were irregular jeans. They the one
Okay.
the stitching one of the stitches was off. There was a store in El Reno that sold irregular Levi's, and boy, you thought you were the cat's meow when you got a new pair of jeans. So 300 pounds, $6. You can buy a pair of jeans, and then you can save up the rest to buy a glove.
Years later in the summer, you would chop weeds in the peanut patches. In the eighth grade, you get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, you said, and to beat that 95-degree Oklahoma heat, you'd go early. You only stood 5'2". You weighed about 120 pounds, and yet you could lift those 90-pound sacks of peanuts and push it into a truck.
Well, after you chopped those peanuts, you had to combine them. And my dad and I actually delivered propane gas to the farms for their irrigation, which made, of course, the foliage stand up. Peanuts grow under the ground like a potato, legume. And so when they were ready to harvest, we combined peanuts until 2 o'clock in the morning. And we would sack them up, and then you'd throw them down at the end of the row. And once it lost its moisture content and they were ready to be, brought into the warehouse, now you had to lift these up. And I wasn't big enough at 5'2", so I had to lift up the sacks. I put them on my head, and then I pushed them up on the truck. And I didn't realize how strong it really made me. But at 5'2", yeah, that was the 8th grade. I had gotten in school a year early, and the school said, okay, you're in the top 10% of the grade, the class, and we're going to let you continue. And so in the next 2 years, I grew almost 9 inches. And
Wow.
all of a sudden, all of these people that I were telling, Mrs. Rosser in the 2nd grade, Mrs. Tate in the 8th grade, and then Mr. Rhodes in the 11th grade, that I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. Now, they laughed until the junior year. Now, in the 8th grade, when Mrs. Tate asked me what we wanted to be, and I said a Major League Baseball player, and they laughed. Well, if you can imagine, like you said, I'm 5'2". I got the same size hands, same size feet, size 12, and the same size head with hair. And so the only people scouting me at that time was Barnum and Bailey. I was not a great.
And as you say, your dad was a propane tank driver. And I guess when you were about 15 years old, he'd pay you $3 to paint propane tanks. And he'd also crawl under houses with him to learn how plumbing works and also how to set up a gas heater.
I did all of that. And also, Ross, I actually, at 15 years old, I was driving the truck.
Were you?
I actually delivered propane, but I had to during that summer, those old propane tanks get a little rusty out there, and we can't have that, and the integrity of the metal. So Johnny was out there painting those tanks and crawling under and bringing all the tools, whatever I had to do. Now, crawling under that house wasn't my favorite thing in life. Let me just say that. I don't think I still like closed spaces for that reason.
Well, the point that we're making is that you did not grow up in a privileged life. In fact, you wrote in your book, and again, it's a wonderful book to read, everybody, and you get a lot of things out of this that are good. But you wrote in your book, I am the catcher on baseball's all-century team. I can also fix your gas leak.
Well, a man of many talents. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things my dad taught me that I was fortunate to have. And it got me through life and got me where I am right now.
Well, on the first page of your book, you said, mine was no rags to riches story. I grew up in Binger, Oklahoma, a tiny town, about an hour from Oklahoma City. JB, I've done a little research here, and I have in front of me the official population count at Binger as of this week. And I was wondering if you'd like to guess what that number is.
700.
447.
No. We were at 661 when I left, and told me
it
was
up a little, but it came back down a little.
Oh, Ross, you haven't been back to Oklahoma in a while, have you?
No.
Have you been to Binger to see my museum?
No, I have not.
My museum is as good as any museum you will ever see.
Wow.
Right there in Binger. I mean, we are drawing 10 to 12 people a year to come in.
That's terrific.
It is unbelievable, though. You really have to believe it and everything else. Now, when I was there, they told me it was 700. So, but what's on the internet, you can't always believe.
Well, that's true. You wrote of your high school days and even some years beyond that. I was successful in everything I tried. Sports, I was all-state in basketball, all-state in baseball. Schoolwork, I was the valedictorian of my high school graduating class. Baseball, I batted .600 as a high school sophomore. The Cincinnati Reds drafted me out of high school when I was 17. At 19, I was a starting catcher in the major leagues. 3 years later, I was the National League's most valuable player. I batted cleanup for arguably the best team ever assembled. By the time I was 21, I'd been the league's best player, traveled around the world with Bob Hope on a 12-day, 5-country tour, which wound up a USO tour in Vietnam, which was a big thrill in my life. I had sat next to Henry Kissinger at a state dinner. I had played golf with Arnold Palmer. Before my 23rd birthday, I was making $20,000 a year, but leading the life of a king. But as you later wrote, sometimes life turns forever. April 1st, 1965. You and your team had just won a baseball game on the road. You got back on the school bus to return to Binger. Your coach was driving the bus. You were within 4 miles of home. What happened?
Well, normally we would have stopped to let Spud Dumbo. His name was Houston. Everybody called him Spud because he was just a short guy, but he was our shortstop, one of the greatest athletes you'll ever see, both baseball and baseball and basketball. And he lived at the top of the hill. It used to be a Y intersection, and then they changed it down to a T intersection, and we would have stopped to let Spud off at the top of the hill, but he wasn't there that day. He was sick, so we proceeded down the hill. And Lloyd, our baseball coach, said, "We don't have any brakes." And I yelled out, "April Fool." It was April 1st. But I looked up and the pedal was on the floorboard. I said, gear it down, because I'd been driving my dad's trucks. And my dad said, "If you ever get into an accident, get in the floorboard." And I jumped across the aisle and I grabbed David Gunner and pulled him down on the floor and jumped on top of him. And we didn't make the turn. The front right fender hit the guardrail. We rolled over 3 times. 2 boys were killed in the wreck. And I guess you learn about death, and you learn about, fatalism, and you learn about a lot of things in your life at that time.
You said your feet hung out the back emergency exit. You saved 2 lives, but as you say, 2 teammates had died. 1 year later, you were playing in the minor leagues. You're at Buffalo, and you broke your thumb late in the season, so they sent you home. You're driving on a 4-lane highway between Wichita and Binger late at night. You pulled out of the right lane to pass a semi-truck. You didn't see the drunk driving the wrong way in time. He hit you broadside, and your car folded into a V shape. In your words in the book, you said, "And incredibly, a doctor was following me in my car. He called for help. I didn't come to until they put me in the ambulance." You uttered a prayer, didn't you?
I said, "Don't let me die. Mom and Dad will be so upset."
Wow. Well, you were in the hospital a few days. They release you without so much as a broken bone.
Doctor said I had the biggest bones I've ever seen. He said, he walked in and said, "Son, you got the biggest bones I've ever seen. Nobody but you would walk out of this emergency room."
Wow.
And 3 weeks later, I was down in Clearwater, Florida, playing in the instructional league.
Wow.
With the mercurochrome still on my head and the scars still showing from the accident. Scars over here, chunks out of my arm.
2 more of your high school friends were killed in separate automobile accidents. So by the time you were 19, you had experienced the deaths of 4 high school teammates, and that had to affect you profoundly.
Well, Spud Dumbo, who didn't make the trip that day, joined the Army and was on leave. He had gone down to Fort Polk, Louisiana. He had set the record for Fort Polk running with a backpack of 4 minutes and 23 or 4 minute and 40 second running the mile in combat boots. And when he got back, I said, "Spud, I think you can play professional baseball. I'm going to get you a tryout." And he fell asleep at the wheel a couple of days later and hit a concrete culvert and died. The other was Danny Lopez. Danny was not on that bus that day either that we had the wreck. Yet he went to Vietnam, sent all of his money back, came back, started driving a truck for a company. A dog ran out. 2 ladies actually pulled out in front of him, and he died.
One more tense experience that you endured. You were having a very good year with the Reds in 1972. You got into September, and each year the Reds players all took physicals about that month, and you felt fine. And what did the doctor find when he checked you?
Well, the x-rays that we took, they called me back and said, "We need to take a couple more pictures. We had a little problem with the x-rays." Then they took 1, and they took 2, and then they started on 3 with a graph. And I said, "I'm not going back in until somebody tells me said, we found a spot on your lung. And so they did a bronchoscopy. They did all the tests for histoplasmosis, tuberculosis. Finally, even with the bronchoscopy, they couldn't get down into the lung to see what the sample was. So they knew they had to go in for surgery. Well, I played in the 1972 playoffs. I hit the home run in the 5th game that tied the game. Played in the World Series. And 4 days after I turned 25, I went under the first surgery, the first staple surgery of its kind east of the Mississippi. And it was a staple surgery where usually they cut you from the center of the chest all the way back around to the back of your neck, which means they get your lats, they get all your big muscles. And a doctor by the name of Luis Gonzalez had seen the surgery with the staple and said he wanted to try it for me. So they opened me up from here back to here and cut the bone, cut the ribs, cut the nerves, muscles, and then took the device, sutured it or resected the piece that was in my lung, and then sealed it back with staples and stapled my surgery close. So if I get an X-ray today, you'll see the staple still inside of me.
Well, you wrote in the book, mentally, it covered me like a shroud. I played the rest of the season without knowing exactly what was wrong with me, but I was able to come through it. And as you put it, they took care of it, but part of me had vanished. The doctor had said to you, you'll never be the same player. And you said he was right. Johnny Bench stopped being Johnny Bench, at least the physical person, but I became more human.
I call it, this is the difference in greatness. And this is where the great ones hit the ball out here and the good ones really hit the ball here. I was up here and all of a sudden I was back here. And if 90-mile-an-hour fastball, you have 0.42 seconds to respond.
Wow.
To make the decision, that's how long it takes to get from the pitcher's mound to home plate. You have 0.17 seconds to react. That means sending the eyes, the brain, the cameras. The brain sees through the cameras, sends a signal to the nerves and muscles, and you react by swinging at the ball. And you had to identify all of this within 0.17 seconds. Now I had almost 25 vision, so I broke it down pretty quick, and I was able to react. All of a sudden, I was just a little bit short.
Yeah, but I was checking on this after I read that. From that time on, you hit 235 more home runs. You drove in another 864, and you played 11 seasons after that. You had 18 broken bones and 3 major surgeries in your career.
And 7 broken cups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
just think I could have had a pretty good career if I hadn't had all that stuff happen.
All right. I want to focus now on one of the most important things in Johnny Bench's life, fatherhood. He has 3 sons, Bobby Binger Bench, who was named after Bob Hope, whom Johnny toured,
and Binger, Oklahoma.
And Bobby Knight, the famous college basketball coach. Now, Bobby Bench is 33.
Correct.
He's working for you?
Works for me. 6'8".
Oh, my God.
225.
Did Bobby Knight recruit him?
He would have liked to.
Uh-huh. But Bobby has said of Johnny, he was and is a great dad. 4 years ago, JB gained primary custody of his other 2 sons, Justin, who's 16, and Joshua, who is 13. They moved to Florida. Explain to us what being a full-time father means to you.
It's all wrapped up into the greatest joy in your life. You know, it's the labor of love. It's everything that I can do for myself, for them. It's what I can give to them, hopefully, and make them grow into young men. But yeah, for 3.5 years, I was 24/7 with these boys. Their mom has moved here now, so we shared custody, but it's wonderful. It's a challenge. It's 5:50 up in the morning. It's wake them up at 6:20. It's have their breakfast ready, get their lunches ready, take them to school, go to the supermarket, come back home, do laundry, get prepared again to go to the school to pick them up. And then whatever activities, whether we have a soccer game, a soccer practice, we have tennis lessons, we have whatever it is. It's just the greatest thing on earth. I have never known the joy like this.
Are you asked to help with the homework?
That would be a no. That's why I have an older son named Bobby. It's beyond me. Let me just tell you that. Even though I was the valedictorian, as you talked about,
Yes.
it's, common sense, and I do have, there are certain things that I can get into, but most of the stuff I avoid.
Have you imposed any restrictions on the
They have not really. I mean, I have rules, and they've, they're such good boys. I really don't have to worry too much about them. I'd like for them to be a little bit more self-sustaining and more self-confident. I want to build that up, and we are. Over these last couple of years, we've started to develop more responsibilities for them, and understanding and saying, I need your help now, and they're more than willing to do it. They understand.
Is Justin driving?
Yes, but not. He hadn't qualified for his license, but he had no desire to.
Huh.
No desire to. And Joshua said he would never ride with him because he didn't want to die.
Johnny, since most of our followers on this website are Dodger fans, I want to read what you wrote in your book. Throughout my career in Cincinnati, the Dodgers were our most hated rivals. If the Dodgers were LA, touched by Hollywood celebrity, we were Cincinnati, as middle America, as a group of future Hall of Famers could be. We enjoyed beating no team more than the Dodgers. Once you went to Dodger Town, their spring training site in Vero Beach, Florida, you could see why the Dodgers were the Dodgers. All the players trained together. They were family. An 18-year-old could walk into camp, see Sandy Koufax or Maury Wills and Steve Garvey and Davey Lopes. Young players saw how the stars behaved and prepared. The Dodgers were glamorous. Maury Wills dated Doris Day. Steve Yeager did movies. They were also a little too smooth, a bit scripted in how they talked and acted. I always thought Bill Clinton was a Dodger. The Dodgers were so polished, it could be hard believing they were sincere. But we respected them, and we knew we had to beat them to get to October. If we didn't win, they did. John, I'd say that more than 1 year, the Dodgers and the Reds are back, and for vice versa, were the two best teams in baseball, and yet one of them didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you win 106 games and you're out of the playoffs because the other team was doing so well. But, I think there was such an aura about the fact that there was Sandy Koufax, and then there was Walter Alston, and the way they carried themselves. I mean, it's the biggest compliment in the world to me, is to believe that all of those those Dodger players were brought up the way that you're supposed to play the game of baseball. And there wasn't any better, infield. I mean, Yeager, Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Say.
8.5 years, major league record.
Yeah.
Never be
broken. They were all
broken.
great guys. They were all great guys, but we knew we had to beat them. But I don't, everybody builds up rivalries and everything else. But I don't think there was, I can't remember hardly maybe one or two fights that we ever had. It wasn't like playing the Pirates or anything like that where you fought every time you played them.
I remember one day, I think I might have been in the dugout to do a show or something, but Pete Rose got on Bobby Welch, and he was really on him, and somebody in the Dodger dugout said, "Pete, you better shut up or I'm coming after you."
That's the way the game was played in those days, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sure was. Now, the first of my 28 seasons with the Dodgers was 1977. That was also Tommy Lasorda's first year as the Dodger manager. And Tommy, Oh, he bragged a lot before the season started, said, we're going to beat the Reds in the National League West. And all people in baseball just laughed. They said, yeah, sure. You're going to beat the team that 4 months ago swept the Yankees in the World Series. Well, the Dodgers came out blazing. Their first road trip, they won 11 of 12 games. They should have won all 12. They were ahead in the sixth inning one night at Atlanta. When it rained, they waited 3 hours, resumed the game, and the Braves won the game. But at the end of April 1977, the Dodgers were 17-3 and 7 games ahead of the Reds. You must have been shocked.
Well, Tommy was one of those guys that probably was the best used car salesman in the world and convinced all of those guys that it could happen. Of course, we just lost Don Gullett and we just lost a couple of people to free agency and everything else. There was no real great excuse except for the Dodgers when you're 17-3. Their pitching staff was great. They still had the same infield. They still had a solidified lineup that was going to play every day, and they played hard. But Tommy was the cheerleader. Tommy was the guy that everybody just, they drank the grape juice. They drank the wine. They did all the stuff that was, and they walked out every day and made it happen. And Tommy was never one not to let you know that. He must have told me that 50,000 times. Every chance he got, he told me how great he was and how great the Dodgers were and how he bled Dodger blue. And of course, he was my wizard on the baseball bunch.
Yeah.
So even the relationship, the great thing about a manager, here's the difference in a good manager and a great manager. A good manager will tell you that there's more than one way to skin a cat. The great manager will convince the cat that it's necessary. And Tommy could make anybody believe whatever it was that they needed to know. And he knew he was a winner, knew how to win. And he was great for baseball. And they had such a great, run for him. But let's face it. I mean, for all those years, they knocked on the door. All the greatness. And I can still mention their lineup, as I'm sure most of the Dodgers fan can, because you respected who those guys and the way they played. The Penguin over there and Billy and Davey Lopes, who was the nastiest base runner I had to try to throw out. And Steve Garvey being Mr. Hey. But that's
Johnny,
the way they were.
I was thinking about this last night. Was Tom Seaver the only Hall of Fame pitcher that you ever caught in Cincinnati?
Yes.
Because you had good pitchers, Gullett, Billingham, Clay Carroll, and you can name some others, but it wasn't like a pitching staff that just scared you to death.
No, even though we led the league in 75 and 76 in ERA, Jack Billingham won 19 games those 2 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what he'd be making today?
Oh.
And what I'd be making.
Was the 1976 Reds team the best you ever played on?
Well, we had Dan Driessen came up as a designated hitter during that World Series. It's just hard to believe. In 1970, Ross, people, when the names came out, Lee May hit 36 home runs, Tony Perez hit 39, and I hit 45. We won 70 of our first 100 games. 70 of our first 100 games. And we had a kid named Wayne Simpson that was just as good a pitcher as will ever walk onto a mound.
Wow.
And basically broke his arm. And we went into a World Series. We only won 32 out of the next 60 at the greatness that it was. But when Joe Morgan came over and Pete moved into third and George Foster came into center field, we had Geronimo in center field, Joe and George in left, and then of course Ken Griffey in senior and right. And you had the Tony Perez. I mean, you had Dave Concepcion was an all-star. I mean, he was a Gold Glover. He was all the things, and to me, a Hall of Famer. If you're going to have other people in there, I told Ozzie Smith one time. I said, Ozzie, if you don't come into the league, Davey wins 10 Gold Gloves, and then you take a whole different look at Dave Concepcion.
Yeah.
But it was a great time of our lives. I mean, obviously, how long can a run go? I mean, you saw it throughout the years, and you saw when the transition happened. You saw when players started to lose a step. You saw how it needed to be a transition to a new rookie, and how it changed the chemistry and it changed a lot of the team and the way it was. Once a starting pitcher goes down, or you didn't have a bullpen where one guy could come in and pick you up, it just sort of starts to, and it's those 6 or 7 or 8 games per year that make a whole difference in a season.
Yeah. All right, folks, let's now review Johnny Bench's 17 seasons, G period, O period, A period, T period, major league career. 1967 to 1983, all with the Reds, 17 seasons, 14-time All-Star, 2 World Championships in 1976, 1975, the year before, MVP of the 76 series when he hit .533 and the Reds swept the Yankees. 2 National League Most Valuable Player awards, including 1 when he was 22 years old, the youngest winner ever. Most home runs and runs batted in Cincinnati history. Hit 45 and 42 homers in 2 seasons. Drove in 146 runs, 129 and 125 in 3 years. First catcher to lead the National League in home runs. Johnny still holds the major league record for most grand slams by a catcher with 10. Wow. National League Rookie of the Year, earned 10 Gold Gloves as the best defensive catcher in the National League with a strong and accurate throwing arm. Inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame the first year he was eligible, as he received over 96% of the votes. The other 4% of people were required after that to take mental tests to continue to vote after their big gap. But he was voted to Major League Baseball's all-time team and all-century team. And this was very special to you. The Reds unveiled a statue of you at the entranceway of their Hall of Fame at the Cincinnati ballpark. It shows you in the act of throwing out a base runner. What an honor.
And there's one in front of Oklahoma City at the stadium of the Chickasaw Park. And there's a street named after me, which is really special. There's one in Cincinnati. There's a Johnny Bench Way in Binger, Oklahoma, and now a new high school Johnny Bench statue in that museum down in Binger. And believe me, I don't know where you're going. If you stop through Oklahoma, you do have to see this museum. It is very much worth it. I am so proud of it. Wow, I had a pretty good career. Just think if I hadn't had that surgery.
It wasn't bad, I think. Now let's get some specific answers from JB.
Uh-oh.
The one question you probably get the most. Does Pete Rose, whom you played for 12 years, belong in the Hall of Fame? And in your book, or your words.
Thank you, Ross. We're not talking about Pete Rose.
All right. You said no. And you said the question might then ask you, I think you ought to be there. And you said, then go home tonight and tell your kids that rules don't matter. All right. When you were young, you and your dad turned on television one day and the Yankees were playing. And what did you learn that day that really influenced you after that?
Well, I was 3 years old, and my dad had wanted to be a major league catcher, but he served 2 hitches in the war, 8 years. So he never had the opportunity. And so his desire was to play Major League Baseball. We're watching the game of the week, and the announcer came on and said, now batting the next superstar, the switch hitting center fielder from Oklahoma, Mickey Mantle. And I looked at my dad and I said, you can be from Oklahoma and play in the major leagues? That's what I want to be. And he said, well, catching was the quickest way to the major leagues and what they needed. Everybody knew I was a catcher. I just never caught. I was 84-3 lifetime pitching.
Wow.
And through my amateur career, because sometimes we only had 9 boys out for the baseball team. We had 10 out for the baseball team, 9 out for the basketball team.
Wow. And
we were state champs in baseball and runner-up in basketball.
Did you ever tell Mickey that story?
Oh, yeah. I've got a picture of Mickey right there on my wall pitching pennies at the Ramada Inn in Tampa, Florida. And the picture above that is my dad throwing the pennies.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, and you said that after that, when you were riding your bicycle or even walking down the sidewalk in Binger, you would see a car come by that had an out-of-state license tag. And what were you thinking as you saw that?
I was thinking, wow, if they only knew who I was right here, they're going through town. Here I am. I'm going to play in the major leagues one day. Oh my gosh, what kids think and do, and you got to believe.
Yeah, that's right. Gary Carter, another Hall of Fame catcher, estimated that he went down into a crouch 250,000 times in his career. He had knee problems. Now, you had shoulder problems. Were the knees ever a problem?
I figured I went 450,000 squats, 850,000 throws, and I never had a knee problem in my life.
Wow. Wow. Johnny, you got big hands. I remember one time they took a photo of you and you had 7 baseballs in your right hand for a photo shoot.
Got to be known for something.
Were you ever able to get to exceed 7?
No. I'll leave that out there for him, but it's a great picture. And people still bring that up so many places that I go.
Yeah. Who was the toughest pitcher you ever had to face?
Well, there was actually Bill Singer and Rick Russell threw similar from out of a blind
No,
side.
I'm talking about hitters. What hitters gave you the most trouble?
Well, Willie McCovey was the greatest. I didn't have a pitch. I could get Willie out on. That was my thought. There was nothing there. He was that good. I didn't have a pitcher good enough to get Willie McCovey out. That was what I believed every time he came to the plate.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Hank Aaron never scared me.
Huh.
He just kept hitting. You know, it wasn't like there were fear. You know, you'd have Willie Stargell, you'd have Hank Aaron, you'd have, you know, Willie Mays to be up there and all that stuff and everything else. But there was a way.
How about Tony Gwynn?
No, it didn't bother me. I mean, I didn't really face Tony Gwynn that much, but I don't care about singles. What do I care about a singles hitter? I need somebody to drive in 1,000 runs. I'm not interested in a guy hitting singles. When I retired from catching and I went to change my approach to the Charlie Lau type approach of hitting like George Brett, I was hitting 351 when I broke my ankle. Anybody can hit singles and would do that. I wanted to drive in the runs. I wanted to drive in 100 runs.
Yeah. Who was the most difficult base stealer to throw out?
Davey Lopes.
Was he? Why?
Speed and acceleration. I mean, acceleration, reading the pitcher, all of those things combined. He just had a great jump. He understood the pitcher. He read them so well. And fortunately, I have to throw out Joe Morgan very often. But as I said, when I was 17 years old, I can throw out any man alive.
Who was the best player you ever saw?
Joe Morgan. You're shocked?
No. A little bit.
But if you needed a walk, you got to walk. If you needed a double, you got a double. If you needed a home run, you get a home run. He was a gold glover, and he could steal any base at any time, and you weren't going to stop him. That stealing the base made a whole lot of difference. It made that one exceptional difference.
Did you realize, and I didn't know this until the last couple of years, Tommy Lasorda one year was in a contract battle with the Dodgers, and he refused their offer. And Peter O'Malley got his whole staff together and said, Tommy may not come back next year. Who do you want to be the manager? And the consensus was Joe Morgan. And they were about to call the Phillies and ask for permission to talk to him.
Really?
And Lasorda called him back on the phone from his office and said, okay, I'll accept it.
Sometimes they call your bluff.
He'd been a great manager, wouldn't he?
He would have, yeah.
Who was the best clutch hitter you ever saw? I'll tell you who you said in the book. Tony Perez.
Well, I was going to say Tony. Outside of myself, I think it was Tony Perez. I wanted to be up at the plate with it on the line.
This was interesting. You brought this up in the book. 11 consecutive years, Tony Perez drove in at least 90 runs. And you helped him one year get there, didn't you?
Well, he had 89, and I came up with a man on third. And I had a pitcher I knew I could handle. I mean, I could have driven in the run pretty easily, but I really did everything I could to get a walk. And I took pitches, and I finally got the walk. and Tony came up and got his 90th RBI.
And what did his wife say to you after the game?
I walked out of the clubhouse and she said, I know what you did. I saw you. I was watching. I saw what you did. Because she understood. Tony was like a brother, better than a brother, best teammate one could ever have. Absolutely, hands and shoulders above all others. Just the greatest man you'll ever know in your life.
Right. And you said in those days, you, Tony, Joe Morgan, and Pete really not only were the leaders. Sparky, tell the folks what Sparky told the players one day in a meeting about the top four.
Oh, we had spring training, and we were finished with spring training, and he said, now all you sitting here, the 25, you've all made the club. You're going north. Just want to give you an idea of the rules. There are 2 sets of rules. Pete, Joe, Tony, Johnny, you don't have rules. The other 21 of you will be this, and this. And I'm thinking, oh, right, this is the greatest. Then it dawned on me. And then Sparky said, I don't have to worry about them. They know how to play the game. They know what it takes, and they'll do everything for the club. The club will come first. And if they ever need a day off or a time when they're late to get back in or miss a curfew, that's going to be okay because they've earned that right. The others, the rest of you are mine.
In 1972, the Reds played the Pirates National League Championship Series, came down to the deciding 5th game. You were home, going to the bottom of the 9th inning. You're down 3-2. The Pirates bring in Dave Justy, who had a great palm ball, among other pitches. And as you got ready to go to the plate, something happened. And tell us what exactly you heard.
Well, I had told somebody in the 3rd inning I was going to hit a home run to make a difference in the game. In the 9th inning, I led off the game. Now, I knew I was going to have lung surgery. It was already known that they had to go in after the season was over and take out part of my lung. I'm in the on-deck circle, and they were in, Johnny, and I don't turn around. I don't pay any attention. And said, it's your mom. And I turned around, and Mom looked at me, and she says, hit me. I swear she said, hit me a home run. And she said, you know what you have to do. Now, whatever happens with the right. And I had a big smile come up on my face because I thought, Mom, I wish it were that easy. This is Dave Justy. And Al Michaels, that was his first year. The windup, the pitch, change, hit in the air to deep right field. Back goes Clemente to the wall. Deep gone. Johnny Bench, who hits almost every home runs to left field, hits one to right. The game is tied.
And what was the pitch before you hit one to left field that you thought was gone, right?
I let off. Well, no, he was gone. I let off he threw me a fastball inside. Ron Santo had just come in from playing golf, and he said, what's the score? He said, it's 2-1 in favor of the Pirates, and Justy's in, and he said, it's over. And they threw me a fastball inside, and I hit it in the second deck, foul, just foul. Because that year I had 45 home runs. Well, it was 70. In 70, I hit 45 home runs. I had 54 foul that year. So this ball went foul.
You said that was the biggest hit of your career?
It was, yeah. There were still chills when I walked into that stadium, and then he, he went away with the palm ball, and it was once in a lifetime.
And that was Roberto Clemente's final game. He wound up his career with exactly 3,000
hits. Because I played in Puerto Rico with you, Roberto.
Yeah.
What a player.
All right. Now this is going to be interesting. 2 years after you retired from baseball in 1985, you were the star in a Cincinnati stage production of the musical Damn Yankees. You played Joe Hardy.
Man doesn't know what he has until he loses it.
Did you sing?
Of course, I just sang again.
Sing again.
Get those earplugs in. A man doesn't know what he has until he loses it. And I sang with the symphony years before that.
Was Gwen Verdon of the cast with you then?
No, unfortunately, again, Gwen Verdon wasn't in the cast. Like you said, you're 84.
Oh, that's right. You were an analyst on numerous network radio and TV postseason games. For 5 years, you and Vin Scully worked together on CBS Radio calling the World Series.
Yeah, that was the most, incredible experience, because you thought, when I started listening, I thought Ben had already seen the game and was doing a replay. I mean, that's how great he was. And it was just amazing. I don't know. You go ahead, because I don't want you to omit my scholarship fund.
No, I want you to do that and tell us how that has really gone up in value. And it's such a big, big part of your life.
Well, I was a high school graduate, 17, when I signed with the Reds, and I never got to go to college. I wanted to do that. I actually had, part of my bonus was 8 semesters of college for $1,000 a semester back in those days. And I played instructional ball, and I played instructional ball, and I played winter ball, and I was working for the Reds in their winter off season. And when I retired, I asked if they donate money to a scholarship fund of $25,000. I was in Binger the other day when they dedicated the statue, and they talked about the $500,000 that I had given in scholarship money to the kids of Binger. Wow. And I've had over 700 kids graduate, kids from Binger, kids from Cincinnati, that'll stay in local colleges and support the community and everything else. So it's been a great thing for me, and a great thing for those young people too, who need to get their education.
Beautiful, just beautiful. When you turned 50, you played golf in several of the senior PGA events. What has been your lowest handicap?
I was almost +3. I was a +2, +3.
Wow. Now, for people who don't know golf,
that means I could shoot 67.
If you're a 1, you're a fantastic golfer. The great ones go into the plus range, don't they?
I could shoot 67, 68 every day, 69. Yeah.
Did you finish pretty high in any of the tournaments?
I finished 37th in Cincinnati. And it was, excellent, really, response. The second day I shot 67. I shot first day I shot 76. My ball hit a sprinkler by the green, went down into the creek, and I made a quadruple bogey. Shot 4 that day, and then the next day I shot 5 under. So it was pretty cool. I've shot, I played in Bob Hope's tournament for 25 years. I've done, Bing Crosby and the clam bake up there in the AT&T, and I've had dinner at the White House. I've walked with friends. The greatest achievement in my life is my friendship with so many wonderful people across this country, and that I've been able to be blessed with that more than anything, and still have friendships that last for 84-year-old guys too.
Thank you. Well, I would say that it's been a fantastic career, and I want you to share with us some of your favorite phrases or thoughts that you feel are important, and you listed them in the book, and I'll just give you each one by one. Don't waste a worry.
My mom was a worrywart, and I kept telling her. In fact, I was very disappointed I didn't write "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff," because when you don't waste a worry, 80 to 90% of the stuff you worry about never comes to fruition, and the 10 or 20% that you do come there, you're able to handle. So why waste all that time, all the stress you put on your body, all these things, when you know you'll be able to handle a situation when it comes time?
Get over it.
3 words in life, the greatest 3 words in life: get over it. Let it go. You can't have animosity. You can't have hate in your heart. You can't have all of this stuff. Something happened, just get over it, because there's more things ahead of you, and you can make changes in your life anytime you want. How am I doing today? I'm awesome. Why don't you be awesome? Think about being awesome. And when you do that, your whole persona, the vowels of success, the AEIOUs of life, and you can put any vowel you want. A is attitude. I've got the great attitude. E is an effort for excellence. Why can't you be the best? O is an opportunity you're given. Don't waste it. I, there is no I in team. It's all eyes, folks. You better have the best individual at each place, each position. You use people, use their knowledge, use what they can give to you. And sometimes why? Well, that why is you, and you are special. Always believe that. Don't wait. Don't hold your happiness in the hands of others. Don't wait for them to applaud. When you do something good, do something to yourself, for yourself. sit in a bubble bath, go hit golf balls, do something that says, you know what, you're a good person. When you feel good about yourself, life is pretty dang good.
Inner conceit.
It's being better than the situation. That pitcher couldn't get me out, and the runner couldn't steal a base. They could, but the fact is that you cannot let that happen. You've got to make it work. You got to believe in yourself. The number one person that you have to live with every day, when you have to look in that mirror, is so important. And you have to have that inner conceit, knowing that you're done. It didn't say conceit. It said inner conceit is the ability to believe and then execute.
And the last one, would you hire yourself?
That's right. If you wrote out your resume, would you hire yourself? Are you good enough? You want employability? E, another letter. E is employability. Would you hire yourself? I mean, would you be honest about it? Would you take that evaluation? Bobby Knight, in that book, his vowels, the A-E-I-O-U, what was his A? Keep the assholes away from you. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? We don't want our kids hanging around bad people. Why are we hanging around bad people? The crowd on earth, they soon forget the hero of the past. They cheer like mad until you fall, and that's how long you last.
I want to go back to your high school days. You found out one afternoon you had just been selected to the Oklahoma High School All-State basketball team. And the first person you saw after you got the news was a girl named Sandra Coy. Tell us about that conversation.
Well, I was called into the office and the superintendent's office, and Hugh Haley, the junior high principal, and my coach and math teacher was there, and he was more excited than I was. He said, Johnny, you made All-State in basketball. I came floating out of that room. I walked into the lobby. There was Sandra Croy, a good-looking junior. And I'm thinking, here's my chance. And I walked over and I said, Sandra, guess what? Made All-State in basketball. And she said, so somebody had to make it. And when I saw her years later.
If an athlete makes an error that is costly and his team will lose the game, they've called him a GOAT. Well, now there's a sports term that's just exactly the opposite. It's G period, O period, A period, T period, which stands for greatest of all time. And I am delighted today to say hello to my favorite GOAT, Johnny Bench.
I went over and I said, thank you. You told me a very valuable lesson. Never expect people to be impressed with who you are or what you've done. Because you got to go to the bat the next time up. You got to do it. They're going to face you again. It all starts over. So if you sit there and sort of wallow in your own wonderful self, you're going to come up short.
When you played in Buffalo, one day you hit a grand slam off Jim Palmer, the future Hall of Famer, who was down in a rehab, and he was pitching for Rochester. And I say, well, so what? I'll tell you why. It is the only career grand slam Palmer ever gave up in his pro career, 19 major league seasons and 4,000 innings. Jim Palmer won 20 or more games 8 times in his career. Wow.
Yeah, he still had an excuse for it. He grouped it, he said. Yeah, okay.
And Johnny, you also said in the book that there are a lot of people in your life that are not given credit for helping you. And that's true, I think, of all of us, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, little league coach to the junior high principal, to the teacher in the 2nd grade, to the teacher in the 8th grade, to the wood shop, teacher in high school, taking shop class, to your dad, your mom, your brothers, you said, and so many coaches that are tirelessly working with you and helping you and spending their time supporting you. Yes. Yeah, we'll never, ever make up for the gratitude we have for them. Or I don't know that we tell them often enough that we love them and that how you appreciate them.
when you were in Buffalo, you had two teammates there named Dom Zanny and Jim Duffalo.
Yes, sir.
How did they figure in Johnny Bench's career?
Well, I'm 18 years old. At that time, I turned 19 to come up that season, and I had trouble hitting the curveball. And they took me under their wing and they said, "Kid, you're going to learn how to hit a curveball." And we went out at 3:00 in the afternoon and they threw curveball after curveball. And that's when I started my approach to actually looking for curveballs from the pitcher, because I knew with my vision and everything and my quickness that I could hit anybody's fastball. So I could look for the curveball. And I hit two home runs off Sad Sam Jones, who had one of the best curveballs in all of baseball. And I hit 2 home runs off of him. And, you know, every chance I get, that's why they're in the book, is because they helped me so much. Steve Boros. Remember Steve Boros? He was my roomie.
You bet.
Steve was my roomie, and he would read those books. And he was so philosophical, and it was so quiet. And he always had that attitude and it's just calmness about him, about not having to, hey, get hyped, bounce off the walls. You got a game today. The game will be there when you start the game, when you're ready to step across that white line.
Johnny, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I didn't know I was going to be here for 3 hours, but it's been a wonderful, it's been great. And always for you, my friend. And, you know, it was the greatness that you had when you were in Oklahoma, but the success you've had when you got out there. And you've never been one. You never saw a more humble man than you. Oh, and I have always admired that. Humility is a great thing. You've achieved so much, but you would never say that. Nobody ever do it, because you lived in the shadow of the great. You know, you walked along and nobody, and you never, did you ever know that you're my hero? Yeah. And you probably felt that along the way with Ben. Yeah. And you gave him the respect, but it also let people have great respect for you. So thank you for being my friend. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say. In fact, would you do us the honor of ending this interview by signing it off as if I were doing it to you when you were watching in Binger and I was on Oklahoma City television? That's
only 70 years ago, 65 years ago, when, hey, everybody, that's the sports for tonight. I'm Ross Porter. Hope you'll tune in again tomorrow night when we have more sports for you. And hopefully they'll give me a few more minutes to talk about us.
Well, thanks to G period, O period, A period, T period, baseball catcher.
Too kind.
Johnny Bench. Johnny, I hope this has been one of the best interviews I think I've ever done. And thanks to you, I hope you enjoyed it.
I definitely have. I appreciate you, Ross. Thank you.